There are patterns in life that are too consistent to ignore. The same heartbreak happening again and again. The same type of betrayal. The same emotional exhaustion. The same feeling deep inside telling you that something is wrong, even while you keep trying to convince yourself everything is fine. And most people ignore those patterns until their life completely falls apart. But what if those repeating situations are not random at all? What if God has been trying to warn you, and you simply have not been listening? Because the truth is, before major collapse comes into a person's life, there are usually signs first. Quiet signs. Repeated signs. Moments where your soul feels uncomfortable even when your mind tries to justify everything. But human beings are experts at ignoring what their spirit already knows. Maybe lately you have been feeling emotionally restless for reasons you cannot explain. You keep trying to move forward, but something inside you feels heavy. You keep repeating the same cycles no matter how badly you want things to change. Different people, same pain. Different situations, same emotional outcome. And somewhere deep down, your spirit is trying to tell you something. But instead of listening, you keep distracting yourself. You tell yourself it will get better on its own. You tell yourself you are overthinking. You tell yourself you just need to try harder. But sometimes, life keeps repeating the lesson because you still have not learned what God was trying to teach you the first time. There are people tonight who keep attracting relationships that drain them emotionally. Not because they deserve pain, but because they still do not recognize their own worth. They continue choosing people who make them feel anxious, insecure, emotionally exhausted, and then wonder why peace never stays in their life. But God often warns people through the loss of peace first. Before the collapse becomes visible externally, your spirit feels it internally. There are environments that slowly poison your soul. Conversations that leave you emotionally drained every single time. People who make you feel smaller instead of safer. And deep inside, you already know it. But fear keeps you there. Fear of loneliness. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of starting over. So instead of listening to God's warning, you stay in places your soul has already outgrown. And eventually, life becomes unbearable. Sometimes God warns you through exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, soul exhaustion. The kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix. You wake up drained even after resting. You feel emotionally disconnected from yourself. The things that once excited you no longer bring joy. And no matter how hard you try to keep everything together, your spirit feels heavy every single day. That kind of exhaustion is often a warning that you are living disconnected from what your soul truly needs. But most people ignore it because society teaches them to keep performing no matter how broken they feel internally. There are people listening tonight who secretly know they are living in ways that are destroying their peace. They know certain habits are hurting them. They know certain relationships are unhealthy. They know they are emotionally abandoning themselves trying to make everyone else happy. But instead of changing, they keep waiting for life to magically improve while continuing the same destructive patterns. And eventually, the consequences become impossible to ignore. The frightening thing about spiritual warnings is that they often begin quietly. God whispers before life starts screaming. But if you continue ignoring the whispers, eventually the lesson becomes louder. There are people who lost themselves completely because they ignored every sign their spirit gave them. They stayed too long in places they should have left years earlier. They tolerated emotional pain because it felt familiar. They chased validation instead of peace. And slowly, their soul began collapsing underneath the pressure. Maybe lately you keep experiencing disappointment in the same area of your life over and over again. Maybe every relationship leaves you emotionally exhausted. Maybe every success still leaves you feeling empty inside. Maybe every time you ignore your intuition, you end up hurt again. That repetition matters. Because repeated pain often reveals unhealed wounds. God sometimes allows the cycle to continue until you finally stop and ask yourself the deeper question. What inside me still needs healing? Human beings usually pray for God to change their circumstances while refusing to change themselves. But transformation requires honesty. It requires recognizing the patterns that keep destroying your peace. Some people constantly attract emotionally unavailable partners because deep down they still believe love must be earned through suffering. Others overwork themselves endlessly because their identity depends on being useful. Some people stay trapped in toxic environments because they secretly fear they are unworthy of something healthier. And until those wounds are confronted, life keeps repeating the same painful lessons. There are moments where God warns you by removing things from your life. A door closes unexpectedly. A relationship ends suddenly. Plans collapse. And while you cry over the loss, you do not realize God may actually be protecting you from a future your soul could not survive inside. But many people resist those warnings. They keep trying to reopen doors God already closed. They beg for things back that were quietly destroying their spirit. And because of that, their suffering becomes longer and deeper than it needed to be. Sometimes the biggest warning sign is the loss of peace. You smile outwardly, but internally you feel constant anxiety. Constant heaviness. Constant emotional tension. You cannot relax. You cannot breathe deeply. Your spirit feels restless all the time. That matters. Because God often speaks through peace. And when peace disappears repeatedly around certain people, situations, or choices, you should pay attention. There are people tonight who feel spiritually stuck because they keep betraying themselves emotionally. They ignore their boundaries. Ignore their exhaustion. Ignore their intuition. Ignore the pain their soul keeps trying to communicate. And eventually, their entire life begins reflecting that inner chaos externally. But maybe tonight, this message is your warning before things become louder. Maybe God is trying to wake you up before complete collapse happens. Maybe He is asking you to stop settling for relationships that destroy your spirit. Stop chasing approval from people who cannot see your value. Stop abandoning your peace just to avoid temporary discomfort. Because some people lose years of their life staying loyal to pain simply because healing feels unfamiliar. But healing begins the moment honesty begins. The moment you finally admit, something in my life is not healthy anymore. That moment changes everything. There are seasons where God intentionally makes you uncomfortable because comfort is keeping you spiritually asleep. You keep asking God to bless your future while refusing to release the patterns destroying your present. But God loves you too much to allow endless self-destruction without warning signs. And maybe those repeating situations are not punishment at all. Maybe they are invitations. Invitations to heal. Invitations to wake up. Invitations to finally become the person your soul has been trying to become all along. One day, you will look back and realize the warnings were always there. The anxiety. The exhaustion. The repeated heartbreak. The loss of peace. The feeling deep inside telling you something was wrong. And maybe tonight, for the first time, you are finally listening. So before you sleep tonight, ask yourself honestly. What keeps repeating in my life that I continue to ignore? What keeps stealing my peace? What truth has my soul been trying to tell me for a very long time? Because sometimes the greatest act of self-love is finally listening to the warning before life completely falls apart. And if these words touched your heart tonight, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so we can continue walking together through healing, faith, peace, and hope in the videos ahead. There are moments in life when everything starts breaking at the same time. Not loudly at first, but slowly. Quietly. Like cracks forming underneath the surface while everyone around you still believes you are fine. And maybe lately, that is exactly how your life feels. You wake up every morning already emotionally exhausted. Things that once brought you joy now feel empty. Your patience disappears faster. Your peace disappears faster. And deep inside, there is a heaviness you cannot fully explain to anyone around you. At first, you try to ignore it. You tell yourself it is just stress. Just another difficult season. But the signs keep growing stronger. The same emotional pain repeats itself. The same patterns return. The same relationships leave you drained. The same choices lead to the same emptiness. And eventually, your soul becomes too tired to pretend anymore. There are people listening tonight who secretly feel like their entire life is collapsing from the inside out. Not because everything looks terrible externally, but because internally they are exhausted beyond words. They smile around others while privately feeling numb. They continue functioning while silently losing connection to themselves. And maybe the scariest part is this: nobody around them truly notices how close they are to emotionally breaking down. Life collapse rarely happens all at once. Usually it begins with emotional exhaustion. You lose excitement for things you once cared about deeply. You stop feeling connected to your own dreams. You become tired of conversations, tired of responsibilities, tired of pretending. And because you are used to carrying everything silently, you convince yourself to keep going even when your spirit is begging for rest. There are people tonight who have spent years abandoning themselves emotionally just to keep other people comfortable. They ignored their intuition. Ignored their boundaries. Ignored their own pain. They became everything everyone else needed, while slowly losing themselves in the process. And eventually, the soul begins collapsing under the pressure of living disconnected from its truth. Some of you already feel it happening. You feel emotionally detached from your own life. You sit in rooms full of people yet still feel completely alone. You stare at your phone hoping something will make you feel better, but nothing truly reaches the emptiness inside. And at night, when everything becomes quiet, the pain finally catches up with you. There are nights where the silence feels unbearable because it forces you to face emotions you spent years trying to avoid. Regret. Fear. Loneliness. Exhaustion. Grief. The painful realization that you no longer know who you are outside of surviving. Some people collapse emotionally because they spent too long pretending they were okay. They became masters at hiding their suffering. Smiling while their heart breaks. Helping others while secretly drowning themselves. Carrying responsibilities nobody noticed. And over time, they stopped asking for help because they became convinced nobody would truly understand anyway. There are souls tonight who are not physically tired, they are spiritually tired. Emotionally tired. The kind of tiredness sleep cannot heal. They wake up already overwhelmed before the day even begins. They feel pressure constantly sitting on their chest. And even when good things happen, their mind still struggles to feel peace. Because unresolved pain changes the way a person experiences life. It changes how safe the world feels emotionally. Maybe lately you keep asking yourself why the same painful patterns continue repeating. Why every relationship leaves you emotionally drained. Why every season of life eventually becomes heavy. But sometimes, God allows the collapse because He is trying to show you what your soul can no longer survive inside. Human beings often stay loyal to things that destroy them simply because those things feel familiar. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar healing. So people stay in relationships that slowly break their spirit. They stay trapped in habits that numb their soul. They continue chasing approval from people who cannot even recognize their value. And eventually, life begins falling apart because the soul can no longer tolerate the disconnection. There are moments during collapse where you stop recognizing yourself completely. You become emotionally numb. You stop dreaming about the future. You stop believing anything will truly change. And that hopelessness becomes dangerous because it convinces you that your current pain is permanent. But pain lies. Emotional exhaustion lies. Deep suffering whispers things that are not true. It tells you that you will never heal. Never feel whole. Again. Never find peace again. But God does not speak hopelessness over your life. There are people tonight who secretly feel ashamed for struggling emotionally. They compare themselves to others who seem happy, successful, peaceful. And they wonder why surviving life feels so much harder for them. But what people rarely understand is this: some souls are carrying wounds nobody else can see. Childhood pain, rejection, betrayal, emotional neglect. Years of suppressing emotions just to survive. And eventually, all of that hidden pain rises to the surface. Collapse is often what happens when your soul becomes too exhausted to continue carrying unhealed wounds silently. Maybe tonight your life feels uncertain because God is trying to wake you up emotionally. Maybe the collapse is not punishment. Maybe it is redirection. Maybe God is showing you that you cannot continue living disconnected from your peace anymore. There are versions of yourself that must die before healing can fully begin. The version addicted to external validation. The version that sacrifices their peace to avoid rejection. The version that believes love must always hurt. Transformation always feels painful before it feels freeing. There are people tonight grieving lives they thought they wanted. Grieving relationships they fought desperately to keep. Grieving old identities that no longer fit who they are becoming. And while grief hurts deeply, sometimes it is proof that transformation is already happening underneath the surface. God often removes what no longer aligns with your future, even when your emotions beg Him not to. But human beings usually understand protection only after enough time passes. One day, you will look back at certain endings and realize they saved your life emotionally. There are moments during life collapse where you feel spiritually lost too. You pray but feel silence. You ask God for direction but feel confusion instead. And because of that, some people begin believing God abandoned them during their suffering. But often, God is closest during the seasons where everything familiar is breaking apart. Because that is when people finally stop relying on false security and begin seeking Him more deeply. Pain strips away illusions. It exposes emotional wounds that comfort kept hidden. It forces honesty. And healing cannot begin until honesty does. Maybe tonight you finally need to admit how tired you truly are. How hurt you truly are. How long you have been pretending to be stronger than you actually feel. Because healing begins the moment pretending ends. And perhaps this painful season is not proof that your life is ending. Maybe it is proof that God is rebuilding your soul on stronger foundations. There are stronger, wiser, softer parts of you trying to emerge through this pain. A version of you that no longer abandons themselves to keep others happy. A version of you that chooses peace over chaos. A version of you that understands their worth even when life feels uncertain. But before that version fully appears, the old life often has to collapse first. So tonight, if your soul feels heavy, if your heart feels exhausted, if your life feels like it is quietly falling apart, please remember this. Collapse is not always destruction. Sometimes collapse is the beginning of truth. Sometimes it is the moment God begins pulling you out of the life that was slowly killing your spirit. And maybe one day, you will realize that even during these darkest nights, God was still guiding you toward healing the entire time. And if these words touched your heart tonight, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so we can continue walking together through healing, faith, peace, and hope in the videos ahead. There is a kind of suffering that changes the way a person sees the world forever. Not because they want to become different, but because pain slowly reshapes the soul over time. And maybe lately, you have been feeling that change happening inside you. You still smile around people. You still go through your daily routine. You still answer messages and try to act normal. But deep inside, something feels broken in a way words cannot fully explain. There are nights where you sit in silence and feel emotionally exhausted beyond anything physical. Your body is present, but your spirit feels tired. You replay old memories in your mind over and over again. Conversations that hurt you. Moments you wish never happened. People you trusted who walked away anyway. And somehow, no matter how much time passes, the pain still follows you into the quiet hours of the night. Deep suffering rarely arrives all at once. It builds slowly. Through years of disappointment. Through emotional wounds nobody noticed. Through constantly giving too much of yourself to people who never truly saw your heart. And one day, your soul becomes too exhausted to continue pretending everything is okay. There are people listening tonight who secretly feel numb inside. Not because they stopped caring, but because they cared too deeply for too long without being emotionally safe. Some of you learned how to survive pain instead of how to heal from it. You became strong because you had no other choice. You carried heartbreak quietly. You buried your fears. You ignored your exhaustion. And eventually, emotional survival became your normal state of living. But surviving is not the same thing as peace. There are moments during deep suffering when you stop recognizing yourself completely. You lose connection to joy. Things that once excited you now feel empty. Conversations feel draining. Social situations feel overwhelming. And sometimes, even being alone with your own thoughts feels unbearable. There are nights where anxiety becomes louder than your faith. Nights where loneliness sits so heavily on your chest that even breathing feels difficult emotionally. And maybe the hardest part is this: nobody around you truly understands how much effort it takes just to keep functioning every day. There are people tonight who feel emotionally invisible. They listen to everyone else's problems while secretly drowning in their own. They become the strong person everyone depends on, while nobody notices they are quietly collapsing inside. And after enough years of carrying emotional burdens alone, the soul begins losing its ability to rest. Some of you no longer remember what true peace even feels like. You have been anxious for so long that calm feels unfamiliar. You have been emotionally hurt for so long that vulnerability feels dangerous. And after enough disappointment, hope itself begins feeling risky. Because hoping means risking pain again. Deep suffering changes the nervous system. It changes how safe the world feels emotionally. Some people begin expecting abandonment before anyone even leaves. Others become emotionally detached because feeling too much became unbearable. Some isolate themselves because loneliness feels safer than rejection. And many people secretly believe they are too broken to ever fully heal. But pain lies to people. It convinces them that their current suffering is permanent. It tells them they will never feel whole again. Never trust again. Never experience peace again. But God does not speak hopelessness over your life. There are souls tonight carrying wounds from years ago that still quietly affect everything. Childhood rejection. Emotional neglect. Betrayal. Feeling unwanted. Feeling unseen. Some of you spent your entire life trying to earn love because deep inside, you never fully believed you deserved it freely. And because of that, you accepted relationships that drained your spirit. You tolerated emotional pain because part of you believed suffering was normal. But God never created you to live emotionally starved. There are moments during deep suffering where your mind becomes a prison. You overthink constantly. You replay conversations repeatedly. You blame yourself for things outside your control. And the exhausting part is that nobody else sees the war happening inside your thoughts. They only see the version of you that continues showing up outwardly. But God sees the hidden exhaustion. He sees the tears nobody else knows about. He sees the nights you cried silently while trying not to completely fall apart. He sees the moments where you wanted to give up emotionally, but somehow kept breathing through the pain anyway. There are people tonight who secretly feel ashamed for struggling this much. They compare themselves to people who seem happy and emotionally stable. They wonder why life feels heavier for them. But what many people never realize is this: some souls have survived emotional battles others could never fully understand. And surviving those battles leave scars. Invisible scars, but real ones. Some of you became emotionally exhausted because you spent years carrying everyone else while nobody carried you. You became the helper, the listener, the emotionally dependable one. But deep inside, you desperately needed someone to hold your pain too. And after years of neglecting your own emotional needs, collapse became unavoidable. But maybe tonight, God is not trying to shame you for being tired. Maybe He is trying to show you that your soul matters too. That you cannot continue abandoning yourself forever. That rest is holy. That healing matters. That peace matters. Human beings often ignore emotional suffering until it becomes unbearable. They distract themselves. Overwork themselves. Stay constantly busy to avoid facing what is happening inside. But eventually, silence catches up with everyone. And when it does, hidden pain rises to the surface. That is why some people suddenly break down emotionally after years of appearing strong. The soul can only carry unresolved pain for so long before it finally demands healing. There are seasons where God allows emotional breaking because comfort was hiding wounds that needed attention. Pain forces honesty. It forces people to finally admit, I am not okay. And strangely, that honesty becomes the beginning of healing. Because healing cannot start while pretending continues. Maybe tonight your soul feels exhausted because God is calling you into transformation. Not surface-level change, deep internal transformation. The kind that changes how you love yourself. How you choose relationships. How you protect your peace. How you see your worth. But transformation always feels painful before it feels beautiful. A broken bone hurts while healing too. There are people tonight grieving versions of themselves they lost along the way. The peaceful version. The trusting version. The hopeful version. But please hear this carefully, your softness is not completely gone. Your soul is not beyond healing. Even after everything life has done to you, there is still a small light inside you refusing to disappear. And maybe that light is proof that God is still working in your life even now. One day, you will look back at this season differently. You will realize that even during the nights you felt completely alone, God was still holding your soul together quietly. You will realize that some endings protected you. Some heartbreaks redirected you. Some painful seasons transformed you into someone stronger, wiser, softer, and closer to Him. And maybe the greatest miracle is not that you avoided suffering, maybe the miracle is that after everything you survived, your heart still carries the ability to hope. So tonight, if your soul feels heavy, if your mind feels overwhelmed, if your heart feels exhausted from carrying invisible pain for too long, please remember this. You are not weak because you are struggling. You are not forgotten because you are hurting. And you are not beyond healing just because your wounds run deep. God is still present, even here. Even now. Quietly rebuilding parts of your soul you thought were permanently broken. One breath at a time. One night at a time. One prayer at a time. And if these words touched your heart tonight, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so we can continue walking together through healing, faith, peace, and hope in the videos ahead. Heavenly Father, tonight we come before you carrying hearts that feel heavy. Some of us are exhausted in ways words cannot explain. We smile during the day, we continue functioning, we keep pretending everything is fine, but deep inside, our souls are tired. Tired of overthinking. Tired of carrying pain in silence. Tired of fighting battles nobody else can see. And maybe tonight, Lord, there are people listening who feel like they have been strong for far too long. So before anything else, please let your peace enter this moment. Let your presence fill every room, every heart, every tired soul listening right now. Father, there are people tonight who feel emotionally overwhelmed. Their minds never fully rest. Even when they close their eyes, the thoughts continue racing. Fear about the future. Regret from the past. Anxiety about things they cannot control. And slowly, the pressure has become too heavy to carry alone anymore. Lord, please calm the storm inside their minds tonight. Silence the fear. Silence the hopelessness. Silence the voices telling them they are not enough. Replace those thoughts with peace. Deep peace. The kind of peace only you can give. Father, some people listening tonight secretly feel broken. They trusted the wrong people. They loved deeply and got hurt. They gave everything they had emotionally, only to feel abandoned in return. And after enough heartbreak, they started believing that maybe something is wrong with them. But Lord, please remind them tonight that their worth does not come from who stayed or who left. Their value does not disappear because someone failed to love them correctly. They are still worthy. Still loved. Still precious in your eyes. Lord, there are souls tonight carrying invisible wounds from years ago. Wounds from rejection. Neglect. Betrayal. Loneliness. Some have spent their entire lives trying to earn love because deep inside they never truly believed they deserved it freely. And because of that, they became exhausted trying to prove themselves to the world. Father, please heal those deep places inside them tonight. The places nobody else sees. The places they hide even from themselves sometimes. Bring light into every dark corner of their heart. Lord, there are people tonight who are emotionally tired from always being strong for everyone else. They became the helper. The listener. The dependable one. They carried everyone else's pain while silently ignoring their own. And now, their spirit feels drained beyond words. Father, please remind them that they matter too. That they deserve rest too. That they are allowed to stop pretending they are okay all the time. Give them permission to breathe again emotionally. Give them permission to heal. Father, there are people tonight who feel afraid of the future. They do not know how things will work out. They feel uncertain about tomorrow. Some are carrying financial stress. Relationship pain. Emotional exhaustion. Spiritual confusion. And because they cannot see the future clearly, fear keeps stealing their peace every single day. But Lord, tonight we place the future into your hands. Remind us that we do not need to control everything to trust you. Remind us that even when life feels uncertain, you are still guiding us quietly behind the scenes. Lord, there are hearts tonight that feel emotionally numb. Not because they stopped caring, but because life hurt them too many times. They became tired of hoping because disappointment followed every hope they once had. They became afraid of vulnerability because pain always seemed to follow love. And now, they struggle to feel anything deeply anymore. Father, please soften those hearts gently tonight. Remind them that pain is not their permanent identity. Remind them that healing is still possible, even after years of suffering. Lord, some people listening tonight secretly feel ashamed for struggling emotionally. They compare themselves to everyone else who seems peaceful, successful, emotionally stable. They wonder why life feels heavier for them. But Father, you see the battles nobody else sees. You know the hidden pain they carried for years. You know how hard they fought just to survive emotionally. And tonight, please remind them that struggling does not make them weak. Sometimes surviving silent pain already requires enormous strength. Lord, there are people tonight who feel deeply alone. Surrounded by others, yet emotionally isolated inside. They wish someone would notice how tired they truly are. They wish someone would ask how they are really doing instead of only seeing the strong version they show outwardly. Father, please sit beside those lonely souls tonight. Let them feel your closeness in the silence. Let them know they are not abandoned. Not forgotten. Not invisible to you. Lord, some hearts tonight are carrying guilt from the past. Mistakes they cannot undo. Words they wish they never said. Choices they regret deeply. And the weight of that guilt has followed them for years. But Father, your mercy is greater than every failure. greater than every broken chapter. So tonight, please teach them how to forgive themselves the way you already forgave them. Set them free from shame that no longer belongs to them. Father, there are people tonight who are simply tired of fighting. Tired of carrying emotional heaviness every day. Tired of pretending they are okay. Tired of feeling like peace only exists for other people. And maybe some of them are barely holding on tonight. So Lord, please hold on to them when they feel too weak to hold on to themselves. Speak hope into the places inside them that feel hopeless. Remind them that this painful season will not last forever. Remind them that their story is not over yet. Lord, thank you for never leaving us even during our darkest nights. Even when we lose faith. Even when we feel emotionally broken. Even when we feel too exhausted to pray anymore. You still remain close. Quietly loving us through every painful chapter of our lives. And tonight, before we sleep, we surrender every burden into your hands. Every fear. Every heartbreak. Every anxious thought. Every hidden wound. We release it all to you tonight. Please let this be a night of healing for tired souls. A night of peace for overwhelmed minds. A night where broken hearts finally feel safe enough to rest. And tomorrow morning, when we wake up again, give us enough strength to keep moving forward one more day. One breath at a time. One prayer at a time. One step at a time. Amen. And if this prayer stayed with your heart tonight, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so we can continue walking together through healing, faith, peace, and hope in the videos ahead. And after all the pain, after all the sleepless nights, after all the moments you sat in silence wondering if life would ever feel peaceful again, there comes a moment when God begins changing something deep inside you. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But quietly, slowly, like the first light appearing after a very long night. At first, you barely notice it. You still carry scars. You still have difficult days. But something inside your soul begins softening. The heaviness no longer controls you the same way it once did. The pain still exists, but it no longer owns you. And maybe that is because God was never trying to destroy you through your suffering. He was transforming you through it. There are seasons in life where God allows everything unstable to fall apart. Because the person you are becoming cannot survive inside the life you used to live. And while it is happening, it feels terrifying. You lose certainty. You lose comfort. Sometimes you lose people you thought would stay forever. And in those moments, it feels like life is punishing you. But later, you begin understanding something deeper. Some endings were actually protection. Some heartbreaks were redirection. Some painful seasons were God saving your soul from paths your emotions desperately wanted but your spirit could never survive inside. Human beings often pray for change while secretly clinging to the very things keeping them broken. We ask God for peace while holding on to chaos. We ask God for healing while refusing to release what wounded us. We ask God for a new life while remaining loyal to old versions of ourselves. But transformation requires surrender. And surrender is painful because it asks you to release what feels familiar, even when familiar things are hurting you. Maybe there were people you begged God to keep in your life who would have slowly destroyed your peace later. Maybe there were dreams you cried over losing, not realizing God was protecting you from futures that would have emptied your soul completely. And maybe tonight, for the first time, you are starting to understand why certain things had to collapse. There are moments during transformation where you stop recognizing yourself. The old version of you no longer fits. The things that once mattered deeply suddenly feel empty. You stop craving attention the same way. Stop chasing approval the same way. Stop tolerating relationships that make your spirit feel small. And while that change feels lonely sometimes, it is also holy. Because God is teaching your soul what real peace actually feels like. Before the pain, maybe your identity depended on being loved by certain people. Being accepted. being needed, being admired. But suffering changes priorities. It teaches you that your worth cannot depend on temporary things because temporary things always change. People leave. Circumstances shift. Life becomes unpredictable. But God's love remains steady through every painful season. And perhaps one of the greatest transformations happens when a person finally stops measuring their value through the eyes of wounded people, and starts seeing themselves through the eyes of God instead. Through God's eyes, you are not your failures. Not your anxiety. Not your heartbreak. Not your worst mistakes. You are still loved. Still chosen. Still valuable even in the middle of your healing process. There are people listening tonight who survived seasons they once believed would completely destroy them. Nights where loneliness became unbearable. Seasons where anxiety consumed their thoughts daily. Moments where they truly believed they could not continue anymore. And yet somehow, they are still here. Still breathing. Still listening. Still searching for hope. And maybe that itself is proof that God never stopped carrying them, even during the nights they felt abandoned. Sometimes transformation begins the moment a person finally admits how tired they truly are. Healing cannot begin while pretending continues. Some of you spent years convincing everyone around you that you were okay while secretly collapsing emotionally inside. You became strong because you had no choice. You carried everyone else's burdens while ignoring your own wounds. And eventually, your soul became exhausted. But maybe tonight, God is not condemning you for being tired. Maybe He is inviting you into rest for the very first time. Real rest. Not distraction. Not emotional numbness. But peace. Deep peace. The kind that exists even when life still feels uncertain externally. There are lessons suffering teaches that comfort never could. Pain reveals what truly matters. It strips away illusions. It exposes emotional wounds hidden beneath performance and distraction. And through that painful process, people begin becoming more honest with themselves. More compassionate toward others. More connected to God. Some of the kindest souls in the world were created through seasons that almost broke them completely. Their gentleness came from surviving pain. Their wisdom came from heartbreak. Their compassion came from knowing what it feels like to suffer silently. And maybe one day, your story will become hope for someone else too. Because people who survive darkness carry a different kind of light inside them. There are souls tonight who still feel trapped between who they used to be and who they are becoming. And that space feels confusing. Lonely. Uncertain. But transformation always feels uncomfortable before it feels beautiful. A seed buried underground probably feels forgotten before it becomes a tree. But hidden growth is still growth. And maybe your soul has been growing quietly this entire time, even while you thought your life was falling apart. One day, you will look back at this season differently. You will realize that certain doors needed to close. Certain people needed to leave. Certain illusions needed to shatter. Because if everything stayed comfortable, you never would have discovered the deeper version of yourself God was trying to reveal. The stronger version. The wiser version. The softer version. The version no longer willing to abandon their peace just to be accepted by others. And maybe that is the true miracle of transformation. Not becoming perfect, but finally becoming honest. Honest about your pain. Honest about your exhaustion. Honest about what your soul truly needs. There are people tonight who still feel afraid that healing will never fully happen for them. Afraid that their wounds run too deep. But God specializes in restoring broken things. He brings beauty out of ashes. Light out of darkness. Hope out of despair. And even now, while you are still healing, He is quietly rebuilding parts of your soul you thought were permanently damaged. So tonight, before you fall asleep, breathe deeply for a moment. Release the pressure to have everything figured out immediately. Release the fear that your story is over because this season feels painful. And trust that God is still working, even in silence. Even in uncertainty. Even here. Because the pain you carry today will not define your entire future. One day, you will understand why certain chapters had to happen. And when that day comes, you may finally realize that God was never punishing you through the pain. He was preparing you. Strengthening you. Transforming you into the person your soul was always meant to become. And if these words touched your heart tonight, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so we can continue walking together through healing, faith, peace, and hope in the videos ahead.